Yep. Oh, yeah. Got it all. All right, well, yeah. I'm all set. You bet. How's it going? Right? I know. I was at a different board meeting last night. Less pleasant, and they were like, I hope we don't see you again, at least for the rest of this school year. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I get it. I get it. So, yeah, how are things going here? Okay.
Nobody's counting those down.
Yeah? Nobody's counting down. Well, that's a lie. Mhm.
I'd like to ask all who are able to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first off, I'd like to welcome all to this evening's meeting of the Lakeview Public Schools Board of Education for the 7:30 p.m. special meeting. The regular meeting will be starting shortly thereafter. Today here at the Weed Educational Campus boardroom. Moving on with the agenda, I'd like to go on number B, resolution to consider an electoral representative and alternate for the June 2nd, 2025 MISD biennial meeting.
This evening's recommended Board of Education review the resolution to consider an electoral representative and an alternate for the June 2, 2025 Macomb Intermediate District biennial election meeting. You should select in thoughts who's going to represent and if there's a need for an alternate. They have to be able to go and vote on that day. I think it's all day. Cast the ballot.
I can go.
I recommend Mr. Bear, Mr. Spaulding. I don't object.
Sound like Robin Martin was willing to.
Yes. Any alternate?
I can do it if she can't do that.
Okay. Okay, we'll take action on the item in the agenda later on.
Need a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn, or motion to adjourn? Okay, we'll call it a motion by Ms. Taylor, support by Mr. Asia.
Yes,
This-
thank you.
It's all good. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. We will reconvene at 7:35 for the regular meeting,
You call for adjourn time.
7:32.
So you're coming.
Yes, sir.
Are you presenting anything tomorrow night? Or
I am.
Barrister Gardens? You're gonna be at Barrister Gardens tomorrow night?
I am. My kid's gonna be there, but I'm gonna be there.
Right. Well, I think you're gonna get announced. I just wanted
Oh,
to
yeah,
warn
I'll be
you.
there.
Jen Zabaraska will probably announce whoever's there.
That is fantastic.
In the dignitary section.
What's that?
In the dignitary section,
Oh, okay.
at the beginning.
That is one of the best things I've seen.
Do you have children?
Getting close.
Yeah, my daughter.
That's Follow the agenda, right?
No worries.
And my name's gonna be just like. Yeah, I'm excited about that.
That was the
Because we're
neatest.
supposed to get some rain today, tomorrow, and Thursday now, and in the 50s.
There's other times here, and you're not.
Really?
You can.
My daughter's in this one,
Well, it's the last one.
So, but that's, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
Okay.
yeah, and Ben got to do it for us.
Yeah,
My kids have both driven out of college. It's tired.
beaten up.
Always bad. And so I ended up seeing my wife. I guess it's maybe Happy Mother's Day. Like, I got one piece of shit here. And
And you get to really have good one.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying, so,
Yeah.
Oh, yay.
like if there's any good ones.
All right.
now I have like try chasing me around.
Again, I'd like to ask all who are able to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to welcome all this time to the regular meeting of the Lakeview Public Schools Board of Education today, May 20th, 2025, 7:30 PM at the boardroom at the Weed Educational Campus. For the record, Mr. Miskelly is out due to an illness, and Mr. Bear is out for personal reason. And we shall continue on with the agenda to item B, the minutes of the regular meeting of May 6, 2025.
Move their approval.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Martin, support by Ms. Stanton. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Madam Secretary, have we any public communication this evening?
There is none, Mr. President.
Thank you. Board of Educational Administration comments. Well, here we are in the last lap before the kids start moving on with the next stage of their lives, and graduation coming up a week from Friday at the high school, so definitely looking forward to that. You know, this is the thing that we look forward to, and parents look forward to, and obviously the students look forward to all their lives and their young ages, and crossing that stage and getting their diploma. So that's going to be a fun evening again, and it's going to be something new for us out at the football field, weather permitting. And we'll see how it all goes. So looking forward to it. And tomorrow night, we have the awards night for the seniors, so that's another fun event and rewarding for the kids to recognize all their achievements, so good stuff. Any other comments from the board? No? Administration?
Sure, Mr. President. Lakeview's team is developing our budget for the next school year, 25-26. In light of that, we have to make our best guess because the state budget has not been finalized yet. So I encourage everybody to make sure and contact our local legislators. Kevin Hertel's a senator and Veronica Paez is our House rep. Let them know your feelings about the state budget. We have a governor's proposal from a long time ago. We have a Senate proposal. We do not have a House proposal yet. And they have just heard on last Friday a lot of information about the Michigan economy and the U.S. economy. And as everybody that watches any national news knows, there's lots of uncertainty about what's been going on with the federal government, tariffs, and all these other things. So it's imperative that those state decisions affect the schools locally directly. It's not indirect, it's very direct. So make sure to get your opinion known out there, get informed, and let them know what you think. And as Mr. Dombrowski said, we have, a lot of recognitions that go on as the end of the year kind of unfolds. Mr. Kaplan and I have been at a number of things together for our high school students, countywide or otherwise. And we'll see a big group of people tomorrow night for senior awards and then graduation. But we have other levels doing some of those kinds of recognitions too. And of course, many classrooms going on field trips to really neat places and very fun opportunities. So we keep everybody safe and we keep everybody smiling as the year ends. And that's what we like to be able to feel it as we go into June. We have some, new folks on the agenda tonight, which we're going to be happy to recognize a little later. And we have our enrollment open season. So make sure to tell your friends and neighbors who may have not contacted it yet what they plan to get in here and get it started, because it is a rather arduous process to provide all the documentation that parents need to provide to be able to enroll in a timely way. So I'll leave it at that. Anybody else?
No other comments? Board? No? Okay. Moving on to item E, board training regarding student discipline.
We have brought forward, one of the things that the district has done for many years with the board is provide occasionally opportunities to be trained in various topics that come up. Back in December, you had a training from our finance consultant and our bond attorney talking about the ways that the board has to finance different, projects and things for the long term. And that was related to, some things we did throughout the last few months. Tonight, we have an expert attorney from Troon Law, Jennifer Starlin, who we work with on a routine basis regularly, because she's helps us with special education and with discipline and various other things. So we brought her tonight to share a few things about the board level discipline that sometimes occasionally, reaches your agenda. She's prepared a few slides, and we'll go through those, and probably we'll entertain some questions along the way as things come up. I'm sure she'll have a few stories to share with us as well.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you. I know I've met some of you before, but a couple new faces. I'm going to kind of quickly go through some of the high points of board-level student discipline hearings. And obviously, before a student discipline issue gets to all of you, there are several steps that administration and the superintendent would follow. I'm not covering any of those and just focusing tonight on what you have to deal with when it gets to your level. If you've ever been to one of our Troon presentations, you know that we always do our caution slide that legal standards might change in the future. So if you dig this handout out in 5 years, just double check that nothing has changed before you rely too heavily on it. And also, this isn't legal advice because we're not in a privileged setting. So if there's some inaccuracy, you can't sue me for malpractice. So we'll start with the 14th Amendment. It does apply in the school setting, and it actually comes into play quite often in terms of student discipline because the 14th Amendment's due process clause says that the state can't deprive anyone of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And the due process clause includes procedural due process requirements, which involve notice and an opportunity to be heard before the state does deprive somebody of life, liberty, or property. Now, way back in 1975, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the right to attend public school is a property interest that's protected by the 14th Amendment, and therefore excluding somebody from public school without notice and an opportunity to be heard violates the due process clause. Now, in this particular case, all of the suspensions, and what the students had argued in this case was that they were just being told in the lunchroom, you know, you're out for 3 days, go home, you're suspended, and you're out for 7 days, go home, you're suspended, and that they didn't know what they had done. So I suspect that might not be entirely true, but they claimed that they didn't have notice of what they had done, and they certainly weren't given the opportunity to respond. Now, in the Goss case, none of the suspensions at issue were over 10 days. So in every school in Michigan, and I suspect every school in the country, we have a breaking point where it's basically 10 days. Suspensions up to 10 days, building administrators can handle it. Suspensions over 10 days, the process changes. And that's simply because in this case, there weren't any suspensions over 10 days. So the court said, suspensions up to 10 days, yes, those do require some sort of notice and opportunity to be heard, to basically hear what the charges are against the student and have the opportunity to refute them. But then they said, we're not here to look at suspensions over 10 days, but once we get over 10 days, I mean, that's getting into school week 3, and that might require some more formal procedures. But they did recognize that even up to 10 days, that's not a de minimis suspension. That could be 2 full weeks of school. That can't be imposed in complete disregard of the due process clause. And they said that the requirements for suspensions up to 10 days, really basic. You have to be, the student has to be told what they did wrong, have what the evidence is against them, and have the opportunity to respond. And that is a good way to safeguard against any mistaken findings of misconduct or arbitrary exclusion from school. But they said that for longer suspensions, like expulsions, putting a student out for the remainder of the school term, or a permanent expulsion, that might require more formal procedures. So since 1975, those formal procedures have sort of evolved through case law and through school policies. And generally what we see is that for a long-term removal, the student has the right to see the charges, to understand a summary of the facts that underlie those charges. You know, why do we think that you engaged in this misconduct? What is the recommended consequence? This is a big one because if they don't know, if they think they're coming to the board for a 10-day suspension and find out when they get here that they're actually before the board for a permanent expulsion, the stakes change, and they may have taken some different steps in advance of that had they known that. So the recommended consequences, they have the right to know that before. Any procedural rights that exist, how many, if you have to be notified X number of days in advance, they have the right to understand what those rights are, and those are set in your policies. The date, time, and place of the hearing. It's not a fair hearing if we don't tell them when we're holding it. Their status pending the hearing. In most cases, this is going to be you are suspended pending the board hearing. The reason for that is if we are at the level where the student has engaged in misconduct significant enough or dangerous enough for us to be considering, a long-term suspension, an expulsion, a permanent expulsion, it's probably not safe to have them back in school while that is pending. And then if there's any specific handbook or policy requirements. So anything that your school has said, this is what we do in this case, and you can set those rules. I know I had a case a couple years ago where we were all set to go to a board hearing and everything was teed up, and the client called and said, well, the parent just called and said that in our handbook it says before we go to a board hearing, we have to have the superintendent and the parent have to have a meeting. And they said, what do we do? And I said, well, does your handbook say that? And they said, yeah. I said, well, you should probably have that meeting then. I mean, that's not a legal requirement, but once you as a district have established this is our process, that needs to be followed to avoid any due process concerns. So once you get to the hearing, you're here, we're at a student discipline hearing. The parents are here, maybe with representation, the board is here, administration is here to present, what the reasons for the recommendation. Really important to keep a couple of questions in mind, because the purpose of the hearing is to determine, does a preponderance of the evidence establish that the student violated one of our rules? And if so, what is the appropriate disciplinary consequence? Those are the questions that the board is tasked with answering through the student discipline process. I have a couple of cases that kind of talk about some of the rights or lack of rights that students have in a hearing. First one might be familiar to you, probably familiar to Carl, because it involved this district, but going back about 11 years ago, the Sixth Circuit, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, which Michigan is part of, ruled that students do not have a due process right to have an attorney at an expulsion hearing or to be notified. Like, you have the right to have an attorney present. So it's not a criminal proceeding. It's not, you have the right to remain silent. If you can't afford an attorney, one will be provided to you. There's not an express legal right to have an attorney at an expulsion hearing or to notify a family that they have the right to an attorney. Now, attorneys are pretty common at expulsion hearings, and I generally take the position, unless there's a board policy that specifically says otherwise, that as long as advance notice is given that the family will be bringing their attorney so that the district can plan accordingly, that's fine. If they show up, though, and there's a surprise, I've advised that, your attorney can't come in here. You have to notify us in advance if you're bringing counsel present. Another case talked about student witnesses, and basically when we talk about giving the student notice of the charges and the facts underlying those charges, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to tell them that Jennifer Starlin came in and told the principal that she saw you opening the locker. It can be, we have 3 students who shared with the principal that they saw you opening the locker and taking something out. Student A, student B, student C. There is that interest in protecting student witnesses, and there's not the right to cross-examination at the student discipline hearing. You're also not required to bring witnesses in, make witnesses available. If the family says, well, I want you to bring in these 10 teachers, subpoena them to the student discipline hearing as witnesses, there's not a requirement that the board do that or that Coral do that. Anonymous student statements, again, as long as we're giving the student the essential facts of the allegation, they don't necessarily have the right to review the actual written statements. And that's really important in a lot of cases because students often handwrite. The principal says, hey, show me, or write down what happened. And if redacting that student's name wouldn't protect their identity because they have distinctive handwriting, or we think the person involved may recognize their handwriting, then we don't have to actually give them that copy of the written statement. I usually recommend providing a summary. Now, I will note that if there's a Title IX matter, the parties are entitled to know the identities of all witnesses and all parties, and therefore anonymous statements would not be permitted unless we also didn't know who they were, like a tip line came in and we didn't know who made it. But we can't de-identify student identifying information in Title IX matters.
Example?
So if you have a investigation that a student sexually assaulted another student at school, that would go through the Title IX process, and the investigator, if there were witnesses, might say, okay, well, Jennifer Starlin was in the area at that time. I'm going to interview Jennifer Starlin and see what she said. The notes would say that Jennifer Starlin was interviewed and this is what she said, and then that would be given to both parties as part of the Title IX process, and they would get to see that information. And that's fairly new. That was new in 2020 and then went away for a little bit last year, and now it's back. But it's also counterintuitive to everyone who works in schools because they're very well versed in protecting student information and saying, please share with me what happened and I won't share your identity, but that's not the case for Title IX matters. So another piece of your job as board members is to always consider those 7 factors under 1310D of the revised school code. So this law changed, I think it was 2017 or 2018. But what the legislature said is, we're going to require that before a student is suspended or expelled, the school consider these 7 factors: the student's age, disciplinary history, whether the student has a disability, the seriousness of the behavior, whether the behavior poses a safety risk, whether restorative practices will be used in addition to or in lieu of suspension or expulsion, and whether lesser interventions would address the behavior. Now, you will consider these 7 factors every time there's an expulsion or suspension hearing before you, unless it involves firearm possession. And that's a little bit of an odd piece under the law, because the law says that if a student brings a dangerous weapon to school, that student shall be permanently expelled from all Michigan public schools, subject to possible reinstatement and subject to consideration of the 7 factors. And dangerous weapon is kind of lumped together to include firearm, knife with a blade over 3 inches, dirk, dagger, stiletto, iron bar, brass knuckles, switchblade. I might have forgotten one. But for this, they've peeled firearm off of that. So knife with a blade over 3 inches, have to consider the 7 factors. Firearm, do not consider the 7 factors. Do you have a question?
That was,
Okay.
exactly, it was a 3-inch.
Yes.
blade one.
Yep. So just for a gun. How you consider those is discretionary, but as a lawyer, I always like to show my work and have our clients show our work. So I like to document somewhere that the 7 factors were considered, because I think that's much more persuasive than just, a year later trying to testify in some court case that, yes, I'm pretty sure we did talk about those 7 factors. If it's documented, that makes it a lot easier to demonstrate that it happened. And the purpose of these 7 factors was, back in the mid-90s, there were a lot of changes to state law regarding students, and we put these zero-tolerance laws on the books. And it was for dangerous weapons, arson, criminal sexual conduct, physically assaulting employees, volunteers or contractors, if a student is in grade 6 or above. And the law says, if you do any of that, you shall be permanently expelled from all Michigan public schools. And then we started, over the next 25 years, hearing the stories about the 3rd grader that brought the knife to cut their chicken. And do we really want to be permanently expelling a 3rd grader whose dad put the knife in their lunchbox to cut the leftover KFC, which actually probably happened to me a lot as a child. Luckily, it was before these laws were on the books, so we skated on that one. But, you don't want to be expelling elementary students for things like that. The point of the 1310D factors was to give schools more discretion. So the analogy that I like to give clients is, if a student commits one of those offenses and they're kind of on the highway towards permanent expulsion or any long-term suspension or expulsion, these 7 factors give you as a board kind of an off-ramp to say, we don't think that particular consequence is necessary in this case, and maybe there is a lesser intervention that addresses the misconduct for this particular student. Now, you have to consider them. Building administrators have to consider them for all suspensions except SNAP suspensions. There is a rebuttable presumption, though, that a suspension over 10 days is not justified unless you can demonstrate that each of those factors were considered. So again, you want to have that evidence somewhere to demonstrate that, yes, the board did consider those 7 factors. Now, not in the 7 factors, attendance, grades, family history, neighborhood reputation, whether a student is a schools of choice student. I hear that all the time, are they a choice student? That really shouldn't weigh into your decision, because it doesn't go to, did the student engage in the misconduct? And if so, what is the appropriate consequence? And any secret information. So I like to tell, when I'm handling a board hearing, I say right in the room, the board's decision tonight needs to be based only on what's said in the room when administration's present and the parents and their representatives are present. So if the parents leave and then administrators are like, okay, well, let me tell you the rest of the story, That's not really a fair hearing because the parents and the student then didn't hear the evidence against them and have the opportunity to respond. Attendance, grades, family history, sometimes that information helps form a picture of who the student is because you as board members don't necessarily know this kid or know who they are. And that's okay to have that information, and I'm not suggesting you can't have some of that information. But to make a decision that's based on that information would not be appropriate. You're really looking at what did the student do, consider the 7 factors, and then what is the appropriate consequence? And that should align with what's in your student code of conduct and what's listed as a possible consequence. Now, I want to wrap up with I used the highway example earlier. There's another off-ramp for weapons, the weapons exceptions. And these have been on the books longer. They were added before the 1310D factors were. And you do not need to expel a student who possesses a dangerous weapon if the student proves to you in a clear and convincing manner one of these exceptions applied. They didn't knowingly possess it. They didn't possess it for use as a weapon or for delivery to somebody else's use as a weapon. They didn't know it was a weapon. The fourth one I've never had happen. I've never had a school employee or a police officer tell a student to bring a weapon to school. I can't think of I always get asked, well, when would that happen? I'm like, I hope never, but I don't know. But if you do tell a student to bring a weapon to school, you can't then expel them for it. But what we usually see on this is if they didn't knowingly possess it, the kid had the knife in their jeans the night before, threw on the same jeans, came to school, oh, I have a knife in my pocket, brings it down to the office. I would say that if they can demonstrate that they didn't knowingly possess it and immediately brought it to the office, then that would eliminate your mandate to expel. You don't need to expel the student in that case. Mhm.
Where would self-defense fall into that?
Nowhere. If somebody says self-defense or I was being bullied, my go-to is I don't think any of these exceptions apply because then you did possess it for use as a weapon, you knew it was a weapon, and you intended possibly to use it as a weapon. So unless the police told you to bring it to school for self-defense, which again, I hope is not happening. But no, anytime I hear, well, I was being bullied, I wanted to scare kids, it was self-defense, I usually take these expulsion exceptions off the table because I just don't think that you can exist in both worlds. Maybe there's a scenario where somebody could weave a story that is convincing and clear and involves proving one of these exceptions in a clear and convincing manner and also using it for self-defense, but I've not heard one yet. Now, if you determine that one of these applies, you're like, yep, the kid didn't knowingly possess the weapon, and the student has no history of suspension or expulsion, there's a rebuttable presumption that a permanent expulsion is not justified. And I mean, this is a lot of words, but it really just makes sense. Like we have a kid that's never been in trouble who accidentally brought a knife to school. I've never seen a school board who would say, well, we're gonna permanently expel you anyways. So if one of those exceptions applies and you find that it applies, and there's no history of suspension or expulsion, then there's that rebuttable presumption that a weapons expulsion is not justified. And
Jen?
Yep. Mhm.
Consequences are justified, though, just not expulsion.
Correct.
So-
You could put, consequences in.
Dan will remember we had a senior coat, worked at the hardware store every day after school, comes to school, throws his coat down on the desk, hangs it on the back of his chair, and someone goes along, ends up kicking his pocket, and out comes what amounted to be, a 2.5 or 2 3/4 inch locking blade knife. And he comes to the board, he has his manager from the hardware store with him and his parents, and the manager testifies that he uses this every day at work at 3 o'clock, and probably, wears this coat home, turns around, and it's in his car, he puts it on in the morning, and comes to school.
Yep.
So in that case, the board gave him 30 days off, but didn't expel him,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and that's, I had a similar case where A student had some things in his car. They were not, they were knowingly possessed. Actually, I think his car in the parking lot had like as they were doing a parking lot patrol, they saw a Crown Royal bag. And it had something in it, like the purple felt bag. So they went and got the kid, and they said, "We need you to come and open your car." And he said, "Is this about the machete?" And they were like, "No, but now it is." There was actually like a GPS in the Crown Royal bag. That was fine. But this kid was like a prepper. Like he did like all these like outdoor, like go in the woods and try and survive things. And so honestly, it was like, there was a lot of stuff in his car that he shouldn't have had at school. He didn't possess it for use as a weapon, and he demonstrated that pretty clearly. But the board still said, you should know better. You're old enough to know you can't bring this stuff on school property. So they did, I don't remember if they did 30 or 45 days, but then they said, when you come back, you can never bring your car back on school property. You've lost driving privileges on our property. Park wherever you want, but not here. And so, yeah, you can still impose consequences, even if they do demonstrate that one of these applies. And then I was also going to say these exceptions, and I know administrators are always, have the mind for helping kids, but it's not administration's job to try and get this information out and say like, well, did you know it was a weapon? Did you, like, they can ask questions about why the student possessed the weapon, and they should do that right away when it's confiscated. But this is the job of the parents or the student and their representatives to come in and demonstrate to you that one of these exceptions applies. It's not administration's job to prove that one of these exceptions doesn't apply.
Or for the board members to pester the student to try to find a way out of, like, right?
Correct, yeah. And I usually tell administrators, when you have a kid, you find a weapon, first thing, why do you have this? What is this? Why do you have it? Because once they go home and talk to their parents and their lawyers, sometimes that story changes. But if the initial thought is, I brought it because so-and-so was bothering me and I wanted to scare them, and then later the argument is, well, they didn't know it was an accident, totally forgot that it was even in the pocket. Now those stories don't really align, and that would be important for the board to know. So getting those initial facts about why something was possessed by the student at the time it's found, that's really important to determine that intent.
So then the 7 factors that you outlined up there, that would be more or less something that would be done by the administration ahead of time, well ahead of time, before it ever comes to us.
What I usually recommend is that at the time that analysis happens several times throughout the process. So initially, when administration is like putting together, this is something that's going to go to the board. And I think, does it go to you first, Carl? Does it, administration takes it to you? So at that point, I would expect the 7 factors would be considered. Then if Carl's making the determination to send it to you guys, that at that point, consider the 7 factors. And then when you guys make your ultimate decision, also consider the 7 factors so that it's done at every level.
And reinforce for everybody that the idea of an MDR for special education student it's really going into pretty good depth on some of those factors up front.
Yeah.
And the review of that material by me with administrators, if it's at my level. We would traditionally have not included MDR documents in the board's action materials.
Correct. Yeah. I know.
Just to know that it happened, and understand we've been around a long time doing this, and we do it routinely for kids that never make it to the board, who make it to 10 days of suspension.
Yep. Yeah, and the one of the factors is whether the student is a student with a disability. And usually when I'm talking to boards is like at the point it gets to you, a team of people who is knowledgeable about the student and how their behavior manifests, how their disability manifests in school, has already done an MDR, which is an in-depth look at the correlation between that student's misconduct and his or her disability. So they have now, because it's before you, determined that the disability did not cause the misconduct.
Well, we're the ones that determine the expulsion, so shouldn't we have that information since it's on us?
You would have the information that it is a student with a disability and that the MDR team determined that there was not that correlation between the misconduct and the student's disability. right, any other questions?
What about a full gun?
Like a fake gun? That, so the definition of firearm under state law requires that the bullet be propelled by an explosive. So an airsoft gun, a look-alike gun doesn't trigger the mandate to expel from all Michigan public schools, but you can exercise your discretion locally and still, you could permanently expel them from your district. Now, that does not automatically mean they're permanently expelled from every other public school in Michigan.
Have you ever had any of these silly water wars, where these guns look so realistic? I'm asking a question because
Yeah, I have, and, there's a level of kind of common sense. Like if it's the little plastic clear blue with a neon green tip, and it's clear and there's water in it, I would probably say maybe we don't bring things that look like guns to school. However, I'm not going to probably send that person to the board, but I've seen some that are, they look like guns. And what I have told schools when dealing with this is, I generally think that is something that there should be a strong message sent. Because when that kid gets out of his car with his gun and runs towards the baseball field full of kids, they don't necessarily know, is this a water gun or a real gun? And that could cause a real panic. And if there's a police officer in the area, that kid could get seriously hurt if they're running with what appears to be a real gun or bringing it into the school. So, yeah, I think that should be clearly stated, especially to seniors and, the last weeks of school, that make smart choices, because that is something that could have really devastating consequences.
Well, and something that's going on all over the state is social media pictures and text threats or Snapchat threats and the intention of, I'm going to get some people worked up and riled up. And then when they get in front of an administrator or a board member, they start to see, well, I didn't really mean it. I don't know what, this was between friends. And well, why did 3 people file police reports?
Yeah. And a lot of that when it's not clear, was this a true threat? Do we think the student did intend to act on it, take steps towards it, or was it a joke gone bad? The board obviously is concerned with the threat piece, but as a school, you're also concerned with the disruption piece. And if that conduct substantially disrupted school operations, it doesn't matter if it was a joke, because at that point, you may have had to close school, you may have had to send home notices, you may have had to have the police come in and do a sweep. And if that speech, even if the police or whoever ultimately found that the student didn't have the ability to carry out an attack or, the actual intent to do that, if it did substantially disrupt school operations, that's still a basis for discipline.
Good information. Any more questions, comments from the board? No? Well, Ms. Ireland, thank you for coming out this evening. Appreciate it.
Always good to see you guys. Take care.
You too. Okay, moving on with the agenda. Item A, resolution to consider an electoral representative alternate for the June 2, 2025 MISD biennial election meeting.
This evening, it is recommended the Board of Education approve the resolution to designate an electoral representative and an alternate for the June 2nd, 2025 Macomb Intermediate School District biennial election meeting. In addition, the board should consider the slate of candidates and direct the designated representative to cast a vote on behalf of this board for whomever you choose from those 3 that are listed. There are 2 vacancies, but 3 candidates.
Mr. President, I recommend that we include a vote for Donald Hubler. I did receive quite a bit of information with respect to him, and I did not receive anything with respect to the other 2, so I am familiar with him. I would recommend that he be one of our choices.
And Mr. Farley was a former board member here in Lakeview long ago. So I think that would be fair to round up number 2. Any further comments?
motion for?
Mr. President, I make a motion that the Lakeview Board of Education approve as presented the resolution to designate an electoral representative and alternate for June 2nd, 2025, MISD biennial election meeting. The duly voted representative is Robin Martin, and the alternate is Genevieve Taylor, and the two candidates that we discussed and decided on were Edward Farley and Donald Hupper.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Martin, support by Mr. Asha. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to personnel, item A, changes in personnel.
Tonight, administration is bringing forward the following changes in personnel since the last presentation to the board on May 6th. Heather Conti, Lakeview High School mathematics teacher. Ethan Palm, Jefferson Middle School social studies teacher. Nick Gonala, Lakeview Public Schools executive assistant for HR. Isabella Kluge, office co-op. Isabella Alvarez, elementary summer learning program. Jasmine Buckley, elementary summer learning program. Samantha Dumas, elementary summer learning school summer learning program. All teachers. Resignation, Marissa Scott from the multi-site latchkey coordinator position, effective May 30. Elementary summer school learning program teachers, Deanna Potasnik. Jefferson Middle School 8th grade Washington trip returning coordinator, Jessica Wise. Schedule B, returning coach and sponsor, Paula Supchik. Schedule B, new coach and sponsor, Matt Booth for volleyball and social studies Olympiad for the prior.
Mr. President, I move that the Lakeview Board of Education approve the changes in personnel as presented.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Martin, support by Ms. Taylor. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Have we any of the new
We do.
hires this evening?
We do. Heather Conti, you want to wave for us? And she's coming to us from somewhere a little farther to the north. I'll just leave it at that. Has been a teacher in math and lots of various clubs and other things at that building to the north. She's a Wayne State grad, Eastern Michigan grad, and it looks like she might have somebody with her. So welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard, yes. Is that an adjacent district to the north?
No, not an adjacent district. A
Okay.
little farther north than that. Fortunately. Ethan Palm is also here with us. Ethan's coming to us after having done student teaching at Wayne Memorial High School and some time at Scarlett Middle School. He went to the University of Michigan and has some honor roll status there. So welcome to Lakeview.
Welcome.
Nick Gonala is back on the wall back there, and he's coming to us in human resources. He's been involved in human resource-related jobs over a variety of places in industry, and has a Bachelor of Arts in Communications at Wayne State University. So welcome aboard, Nick. And that is all we have in attendance tonight.
Perfect. Well, welcome aboard to all the new hires this evening, and we look forward to a long and prosperous career here at Lakeview with you. Thank you. Moving on to curriculum, item A, Lakeview High School football team camp.
The Lakeview High School football players would like to attend a team camp at Grand Valley State University in Allendale, Michigan. This camp includes 2 nights and 3 days of team bonding with intensive football skills training and gives exposure to life on a college campus. Players will run through daily practices in addition to working on conditioning and strength training exercises. This opportunity will give our players a chance to improve their knowledge of our schemes while helping them to work their way into a better condition for the upcoming season. Approximately 40 to 50 students will attend this outing with varsity coach Patrick Threet and other staff member coaches. Transportation will be provided through Blue Lakes Charter and Tours departing from LHS on Friday, July 25th, 2025, and returning home on Sunday, July 27th, 2025, following a stop at Michigan Adventures on the way home. The students will not miss any school as the trip will occur over summer break. The estimated cost per student is $310, which will be paid by the families of the students. Fundraising opportunities will be available to help with the cost of the trip. Mr. Zaborowski is here to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the Lakeview High School football team trip at Grand Valley State University in Allendale, Michigan, from July 25th through July 27th, 2025.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Martin, support by Ms. Stanton. Discussion on the motion.
It just doesn't seem long enough.
Yes,
It's a lot of kids to take for a day.
there you
It's,
go.
it's very intense.
Get them all in there and.
It is very intense. They are, work them hard. And that's why they stop at Michigan Adventure on the way home, let them unwind. But
There you go.
it's an annual trip, and Coach Three's been doing it for at least 10 years now, so.
Nice, good stuff. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Item B, Lakeview High School AP Spanish Language and Culture Course Proposal.
Lakeview High School is proposing a new AP Spanish Language and Culture course to replace the current Spanish 4 and 5 offerings. This new advanced option will give students the opportunity to earn college credit with the advanced placement exam. It helps students develop the language and proficiency of usage through 3 different communication modes: interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational. Students learn about the culture using a variety of authentic materials such as journalistic and literary works, interviews, and podcasts. Activities are incorporated that increase fluency, including oral presentations as well as dialogue and conversation sessions. This course is designed to provide students with the necessary skills and intercultural understanding needed to enable them to communicate successfully in an environment where Spanish is spoken exclusively. It would be offered for accelerated students wanting to continue their world language credits beyond the graduation requirement with the opportunity to earn college credit through the AP exam. It would run for 2 consecutive semesters for students who have completed Spanish 1, 2, and 3. This course would be offered new for the 26-27 school year. The total cost to implement AP Spanish Language and Culture is $5,231.70. This includes the new textbooks, TMAS, and AP exam prep, both with 6-year digital access, as well as all teacher resources and materials. The Lakeview High School Building School Improvement Committee and the District School Improvement Committee have reviewed and approved the new course proposal for AP Spanish Language and Culture. The Board of Education Curriculum Subcommittee has also reviewed the proposal this evening, and it's being presented tonight for final review and approval by the board.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the AP Spanish Language and Culture course proposal for the Lakeview High School to begin in the fall of 2026.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Taylor, support by Ms. Stanton. Discussion on the motion.
I'd like to comment that the presentation that we were provided today before the meeting was very impressive. The materials were outstanding. The conversational component in the class and coursework is just very impressive, and it's a great thing to offer additional opportunities to our students.
Awesome, good stuff.
And I just want to piggyback on that, just thinking about the monetary amount that AP offers. We spoke with the teachers that will be presenting this, and if a student went in and they took the AP, they could place as far as even Spanish 4 at college. Even if they get to Spanish 3, they've saved 2 years at 8 credit hours at $600. That's $4,800 per kid. If you have 30 kids, you do the math. We save huge on this, and so does the community. So it is a really, really great thing for us.
Awesome, good stuff. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item C, Lakeview High School Senderos Super Site Levels 1, 2, 3 textbook and instructional materials.
Lakeview High School is proposing to replace current Spanish textbook and instructional materials with new resources that are digital and built to address today's dynamic learning environment. Sendero Super Site offers a program that immerses students in authentic Spanish language and culture experiences through text, video, audio, and online learning opportunities. The vocabulary is relevant to daily life so that students will gain the skills necessary to make connections and share ideas and experiences with their peers and to build everyday communication skills that are useful everywhere. Senderos is a digital comprehensive Spanish language curriculum offered at 3 levels of learning that's designed to get students ready for AP Spanish in 4 years. Senderos Level 1 would be offered beginning with the 25-26 school year, followed by Level 2 for the 26-27 school year, and Level 3 for the 27-28 school year. The total cost for implementation is $81,336.90 and includes physical teacher resource books for each level and a 6-year online student activity manual site license. The Lakeview High School Building School Improvement Committee and District School Improvement Committee have reviewed and approved the new textbook and instructional materials proposal for Sendero Super Site Levels 1 through 3. The Board of Education Curriculum Subcommittee has also reviewed the proposal this evening, and it's being presented for final review and approval by the board.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve implementation of the Senderos Super Site Levels 1 through 3 textbook and instructional materials proposal for Lakeview High School to begin in the fall of 2025.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Taylor, support by Ms. Martin. Discussion on the motion.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but this program actually applies to Jefferson as well, because Level 1
Yes.
starts at Jefferson, and that part of the materials are
Right.
included in this cost.
Yeah, the majority of our students take their first foreign language class, world language class, in 8th grade. We do have a population who doesn't take it till 9th grade, but it'll be the same materials, whether you're taking it in 8th or 9th grade, and it now runs straight up and prepares them for that AP opportunity if they decide to go that far.
Nice.
And our last instructional resource was from 2010, and our teacher was sharing some of the completely obsolete things that students were learning language for and all the things that this will now include, so.
Like renting movies.
Renting movies from the video store, CD players and things like that, so.
Wow. No, it's
Have you
good.
seen a large, a lot more kids, is this more popular option for foreign language, or is this the most popular one?
This curriculum resource,
Spanish, is it the most-
yeah, we have students take a lot of Spanish, absolutely. And I think when students are on the fence, we do like to share that there are lots of countries that, speak Spanish, and depending on what your interests are. I also think this type of material is how kids are learning. You think about Duolingo and other things like that, where people are choosing to learn a foreign language through digital resources and things like that. And so a lot of that's built in. So really just trying to be relevant with what we're offering kids.
The nice thing about this program is it does have a lot of individual interaction with, basically, I guess it would be an AI, but, maybe you're not so embarrassed to go to the class because you can practice talking
Yes.
to this program, and it can tell you where you're incorrect in your pronunciation, instead of, making an embarrassing situation in class, and saying something incorrectly.
Individualized feedback.
So it is pretty cool. I think it's a great thing for our school. And I know at the University of Michigan, they make you take 4 years of Spanish. So we're preparing these kids to do great things.
Good stuff. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. And again, thank you to the staff that put all this energy into doing this research. Good stuff, thank you. Okay, moving on to item D, Lakeview High School Open SciEd Instructional Materials Proposal, and there's a revised sheet at our place this evening.
Lakeview High School is proposing the purchase of Open SciEd new instructional materials for general science classes. The curriculum is open-sourced, cross-curricular, vertically aligned, and fully incorporated with the three-dimensional learning of the new science standards. It also includes sequencing of integrated science for grades 9 through 12, offers teacher support through instructional materials that align with next-generation science standards, and is the curriculum that has recently been adopted at JMS, so will provide a smooth transition from middle to high school science. High-quality science materials will help students gain critical thinking skills that are essential to thrive in today's world, will allow staff to provide a science education that's culturally relevant to prepare students for the world of tomorrow. High school science staff began reviewing these materials in 2022 and will finalize implementing this new higher standard for science learning before the start of the 25-26 school year. The cost to fully implement Open SciEd instructional materials at Lakeview High School is approximately $10,397.84 per year, because this is for the actual instructional materials, the consumables, and that includes consumables and lab supplies for general physics, chemistry, and biology. There will be a one-time startup cost of $5,037 for non-consumable science materials, so the projected 10-year cost for the materials would be approximately $109,015.40. The Lakeview High School Building School Improvement Committee and the District School Improvement Committee have reviewed and approved these new instructional materials through Open SciEd. The Board of Education Curriculum Subcommittee has also reviewed the proposal this evening, and it's being presented tonight for final review and approval by the board.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the Open SciEd instructional materials proposal for Lakeview High School to begin fall of 2025.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Taylor, support by Mr. Asha. Discussion on the motion.
Again, this is a great program. The focus isn't so much on kind of how we learned, where you just memorize. This is application, understanding why you're applying, and delving into the questions of why does this happen? If you're given this set of circumstances, how do you apply it to this? So critical thinking, and the nice thing about it is there's a lot of group activities, so these kids have to talk to each other instead of doing this. So their necks will strengthen because they'll have them up, and they'll be hopefully having some eye contact too. So that's a great thing, especially in this day and age. And it'll push them out of their comfort zone, but it's a good thing.
Awesome.
Sure.
Well, and with the middle school already having been doing this,
Right, for what,
for the high
years?
school to take it on.
Great
was-
alignment.
The kids are going to be used to it.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And more good stuff. Awesome. And item E, Jefferson Middle School and Lakeview High School Health Education textbooks and instructional materials proposal.
All right, last one. The health education departments at both Jefferson Middle School and Lakeview High School are proposing new textbooks and instructional materials to help them equip students with essential knowledge about physical, mental, and emotional well-being that will lead to healthier behaviors and promote overall wellness. At JMS, for their health and human sexual development courses, they are proposing the purchase of a new textbook, Comprehensive Health Skills for Middle School. At LHS, for their health and nutrition course, they are proposing a new textbook, Essential Health Skills for High School, with new instructional materials for human development, relationships, and sexual health. These materials are current and relevant and rapidly changing and evolving subject area and society. They are designed to help students understand complex concepts while building a strong knowledge across all subject areas. The selected materials align with state district goals and are in compliance with educational requirements. The total cost to update all health textbook and instructional materials for both Jefferson Middle School and Lakeview High School is $17,647.15. The new materials would be available at JMS and LHS for health classes for the upcoming 25-26 school year. The Jefferson Middle School and Lakeview High School Building School Improvement Committees, the District School Improvement Committee, and the District Sex Education Advisory Committee have all reviewed and approved the new textbooks and instructional materials proposal for health education classes at both JMS and LHS. The Board of Education Curriculum Subcommittee has also reviewed the proposal this evening. It's being presented tonight for final review and approval by the board.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the JMS Comprehensive Health Skills for Middle School and LHS Essential Health Skills for High School textbook with new instructional materials proposal to begin at both JMS and LHS in the fall of 2025.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Taylor, support by Ms. Martin. Discussion on the motion.
I think there's, it was a great presentation by the two teachers that brought it. There is a component, in the high school where they're teaching the sex ed part of the health curriculum, and the book is completely separate. So those people that opt out, they're not basically having to even be part of that book, which I think is a nice option for people that opt out of that. Additionally, they're bringing in health risks like vape that wasn't here before, pandemic stuff. You know, things about that we have dealt with and those kids have dealt with, that are more realistic to them. So I think it is a good upgrade for our school.
It sounds like more current affairs as well.
Exactly, exactly. More applicable, maybe they're not gonna giggle so much, but, I mean, you're still gonna get those things.
All right.
I think they said 2009, their current
Yes.
textbook was from, so obviously. And our middle school didn't even have a formal resource. Teachers were gathering things, and so we said we would definitely want to have something that's adopted and board-approved through a process for these sorts of topics, so.
Yes.
Well, as we all know, things have changed over time, and yes, there are options, so it's good stuff.
It is good.
Any other comments?
I think that the committee was sharp in realizing that we did a lot of work. Dan will remember, and Tracy would too, 2005, 6, 7, we did a whole bunch of work on updating things that were 20 years old at the time. And those were going to carry us through when then COVID happened.
Right.
So some of these are past their, what I would call expiration dates, but partly because of that. We weren't able to do the same kinds of work with our staff in that background work to set these up. And you've seen a number of these come forward in the last 3 years, partly grant funded, partly not, because we're making the catch up now after post-COVID. So.
Time has come.
I'd just like to say one last thing, with the people who presented to us tonight. They did an exceptional job.
They did.
They were very well prepared. They had examples. Any questions that we had, they had a response for us. It was very well-informed, meeting, and the ladies the teachers were fantastic. So I totally appreciate, as a board member, their preparedness and, like I said, the ability to give us examples. They didn't know what our questions were gonna be, but they had answers, so it was very well prepared.
I'll share that feedback with them, because you're right, they are all very passionate and have put a lot of time and energy into picking the right resources to give their kids what they need. So I'll definitely share that. Thank
You know,
you.
across all these updates tonight, all of the staff that were engaged in all these things, if you could extend the same thanks to all
Will
of them,
do.
we appreciate it. Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to business. Item A, custodial services bid, contract recommendation.
Tonight, administration brings forward a recommendation to award the custodial and minor maintenance services contract to HES Facilities Management beginning July 1st, 2025. In April, a request for proposal was advertised and bidders were solicited as district policy requires. Numerous companies attended site visits and district-wide walkthroughs, with numerous other companies inquiring about the project. Ultimately, 11 companies submitted sealed bids on Wednesday, April 30th, when they were publicly opened and read aloud. Administration reviewed the bids and determined multiple bidders had submitted 100% complete bids with no disqualifications. Based on competitiveness of pricing, 3 vendors were invited to participate in post-bid interviews on Friday, May 9th. At the conclusion of the post-bid interview process, administration confirmed 2 of the invited bidders were viable in size, scope, and methods to meet the needs of the district. Administration then began background checks to further vet both vendors. Reference contacts were conducted, both formal and informal, with multiple school-based clients of the vendors. Because both vendors had lists of clients beyond the required reference list, administration was able to move outside of the required reference list to other clients served. After background checks, district officials noted mixed reviews disqualifying one of the vendors. Reference checks on HES were all very positive, and company officials outlined an extensive transition process, as well as significant quality controls to ensure district needs for cleaning and minor maintenance could be achieved successfully. Administration then scheduled a second post-bid interview with HES. After the second post-bid interview, it was determined that HES was the lowest qualified bidder. HES serves approximately 150 educational clients in 28 states, including K-12 schools, colleges, and universities. They clean and maintain more than 200 million square feet of building daily. Lakeview's RFP submittal requires the staffing level, hourly wage, overall pricing forms, proof of insurance, workers' comp factor, bid bond, alternates for equipment, chemicals, and paper products, among many other things. Our RFP also requires many specific affirmative responses for compliance inside of its 108 pages. HES provided an additional 90 pages of material outlining the company policy, philosophy, procedures, timelines, hiring practices, training, retention, leadership descriptions, etc. All of this would become part of the contract with HES. Therefore, based on pricing, post-bid interviews, competitiveness of the bid response, and positive background checks, administration is confident that HES will be able to meet the high level of expectation the district has come to expect from our contracted service providers. Therefore, administration is recommending award of contract to the lowest qualified bidder, HES Facilities Management, for district-wide custodial and minor maintenance services for 2 years, beginning July 1st, 2025 through June 30, 2027, at a monthly base rate of $107,784.96. Required alternate pricing for additional service on an ad hoc basis was also provided, such as weekend rentals or other special events not identified in the RFP. Additionally, required alternates on equipment, chemicals, and paper products is also identified on a monthly basis within the RFP. And administration will negotiate with HES on the use of these additional required alternates as the needs are identified through the transition process.
Mr. President, I recommend that the Board of Education approve the district's custodial and minor maintenance services contract to HES at a monthly base bid cost of $107,784.96, beginning July 1st, 2025, and ending June 30th, 2027, as presented.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Martin, support by Ms. Stanton. Discussion on the motion.
What is a performance bond?
So that is an assurance that if the company that we were to hire were to say, we're going out of business or we can't perform the work that you need, it gives us the ability to say, all right, now we can go after and hire someone else to put them in their place. It's basically, it's an assurance for us that we know that the company is going to be able to do the work. And if they can't, we have this performance bond that we have the ability to make sure that we're protected.
Okay. I know we like to see the hallways clean, the properties cleaned up. Do we have a commitment here that these staff will be sure to secure our facilities when the day is over at each of the buildings, unlike some of the experiences we've seen over the last couple of years?
I haven't gotten into that deep of a conversation yet, but those assurances that, or those issues that we have listed in our internal checklist that we need to have addressed will be addressed.
It's in the bid spec.
It is, okay. Because there's been far too much sloppiness going on over the
Yeah,
last.
securing
years.
buildings, all of that's part of the bid spec.
Okay, cool. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item B, cafeteria table purchase recommendation.
Tonight, the administration is bringing forward a recommendation to award a food service furniture bid to School Fix for the purchase of cafeteria tables at multiple schools. The cafeteria tables at Greenwood, Harmon, and Wheat are significantly aged, show clear signs of wear and tear from years of daily use. Many of the surfaces are scratched, stained, or warped, and several of the tables have mechanical issues that make folding or securing them difficult and potentially unsafe. The outdated condition of the tables not only detracts from the overall appearance of the cafeteria, but also raises concern about cleanliness, functionality, and long-term durability. Replacing these tables are necessary to provide a safe, more welcoming environment for students and staff during meal times and school events. Projected cafeteria table needs were determined through a review with administrative staff at each building. We also used the Michigan Revised School Code base for competitive bids and subsequently used a small purchase procurement, which kind of falls under the food service and MDE procedure. Multiple furniture vendors were bid. and engaged for quotes ultimately, and then subsequently to this paper being put in your hands, there's actually 3 vendors. We had one come in late last night who's still higher than the bid that's being proposed. Submitted valid quotes for all desired furniture and specifications. Upon review of the submittal, it was determined that School Fix had submitted the most qualified bid at a price of $88,130.49 for 36 cafeteria tables. The purchase will be funded by the Food Service Fund, not the general fund. Therefore, it is recommended that the board approve the award of bid for miscellaneous cafeteria tables to School Fix for $88,130.49.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the award of a bid for district-wide miscellaneous furniture to School Fix in the amount of $88,130.49.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Taylor, support by Ms. Martin. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Mr. President, seeing no more business to attend to, I motion we adjourn.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Asia, support by Ms. Martin. Discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, we are adjourned, 8:43 PM.